Thanks. Interesting. Nice video. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ADMH, Adoption of Digital Marketing in Healthcare, a community in healthcare and wellness sector, I, Chandan Anand, Vice President of Finosaf Group and ADMH, welcome all of you in today's forum. ADMH presents Healthcare Summit 2021 on the topic emerging world of modern teleconsultation and telemedicine. We thank our partners who supported in our case study today. Digital partner InnoSub Digital, academia partner ASMA, a leading community in academia, AI partner Orai Robotics. We feel very privileged and glad to host such an event. I would like to drive your attention towards few initiatives taken under ADMH. ADMH is an emerging leading community in healthcare and wellness, as I said, with an outreach of over 20,000 industry stakeholders. As health and holistic well-being takes center stage in our lives, healthcare marketing has also grown in its importance sector rapidly and involves and explores new opportunities in the world where the power of digital technologies plays an integral role for driving growth and business success. ADMH is creating knowledge sharing platform and networking platform via webinars and virtual events with who's who from the industry, creating opportunities of collaborations between corporate, government, and healthcare stakeholders. ADMH community ecosystem comprises of stakeholders from healthcare industry, including doctors, healthcare practitioners, and marketeers, pharmaceutical companies, hospital administrators, government regulatory bodies, health tech companies, solution providers, and startups. We also encourage you to share your innovation, initiatives, articles, news stories, or any interesting case studies. Our editorial team will help publish the content on ADMH portal with a wide social media impactful reach via LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, and Twitter handles. With all these special initiatives, ADMH is emerging as one of the pioneer community in India, helping doctors, hospitals, and healthcare professionals the power of digital and social media for business growth and patient reach. This was a brief about ADMH. The deliberation today will have a deep talk and experts comment over various important topics related to emerging world of modern teleconsultation and telemedicine. What are some of the teleconsultation trends that are currently transforming the healthcare sector? How does telemedicine impact the healthcare economy in the post-pandemic world? How can telemedicine and teleconsultations help to decentralize and make healthcare more accessible? How can technology such as artificial intelligence and other new age emerging technology can enhance the reach of telemedicine? So these are the top points we'll be getting the experts come in today. We are thrilled to inform that webinar got a good response and participation from across the country. We are glad to have your participation as listeners, speakers, and partners. Keep the interaction going on by asking questions to the speakers over the chat box. We are really thankful to all of you. May I please invite my colleague Ved Prasad, who is the connecting link between the eminent speakers today and us. He would like to introduce the speakers for the day. Ved.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, pretty much. Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon to all of you. So it's my great privilege that I'm here to be a part of ADMH Healthcare Summit 2020-21. So let's start with our keynote speaker. We do have Baljit Singh Bedi is as a hello, am I audible?
Yes, Ved, go ahead.
Yes, so BS Bedi sir is now today's keynote speaker. Baljit Singh Bedi is a Chief Operating Officer at Telemedicine Society of India. He has completed his BTech and MTech from Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Delhi. After serving for 5 years in IIT Delhi as a researcher, he joined Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. As a head of Medical Electronics and Telemedicine Division, he promoted the development of telemedicine software platforms and launched a number of e-health and telehealth scheme covering many states in India. And let me tell you, he is the former president of Telemedicine Society of India and was advisor to the Center of Development of Advanced Computing, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So over to you, sir. B.S. Bedi, sir.
Welcome, Bedi sir. Yes. Bedi sir, kindly enlighten with us with your opening remarks. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Good afternoon, friends. I'm really. Hello.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
audible, sir. Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Again, see, I'm really thankful to ADMH for calling me in this webinar, which is very close to my heart. See, as you, I will just tell you right from the beginning when I was given the task of promoting ICT from this. I'm talking about my role. Although I started in the beginning, it was medical electronics only. So promotion of development of medical electronic equipment in the country to counter the imports and all. But slowly, our strength was in ICT, and over the years, the emphasis changed to software-based things. So it was during just a couple of years before the 21st century, 1998 or so. See, I just was, contemplating how, health ICT can best suit to really improve healthcare delivery. Now, when one thought immediately, you see, this telemedicine was a very new phenomenon which was coming across the world also, but in advanced countries it had started. And in Indian, the typical geographical conditions, most of the population in remote areas, doctors being all concentrated in the bigger cities, consultations not being given, and if anything happened, the whole thing, the patients from the rural, urban, semi-urban and lower cities were forced to come to for consultation to the bigger hospitals and associated problems they used to face. The immediate thing in my mind was just this technology was emerging. So why not focus our, first to have a futuristic look and then focus attention on this. My first job was, instead of using for expensive platforms, software platforms, you see, everything was done on desktop, etc. at that time. So I concentrated on supporting R&D at the very brilliant group area in which CDAC was also there, and also at Jadavpur University and IIT Kharagpur. Once the platforms are being developed, also it was very important they will be used. So three super specialty hospitals, AIIMS, PGI Chandigarh, Sanjay Gandhi, and JIPMER, few hospitals, they were our partner, and they were linked to few district medical colleges and all. In those days, when we were starting testing the technology, it was apparent that let's test it and then expand it to the places where it is mainly required. See, gentlemen, that whole thing, these platforms started coming. In those days, interoperability was not in our view. So these platforms became independent. And one was that one you are hearing all about these days at CDEC Mohali, they developed Sanjeevani platform, and Mercury platform was developed at CDEC Pune, and they were very powerful platforms. And also at Kharagpur, we had another. Gentlemen, immediately once the technology is there, it has to be used and tested. So I started setting up telemedicine centers in different states. It was very interesting. This was effort from Ministry of IT, Information Technology, and space very proactively, ISRO, because they had the space connectivity, through satellites. They also started using that connectivity to link some inaccessible areas, even, defense forces, etc., the remote areas, and also collaborated with the hospital. And suddenly we had a number of pilots going on. I'll just narrate two of my experiences. One was, I think most of us in this group are very senior doctors. So one was most of the centers were all generic consultation, but a couple of them we chose which were focused on certain things. One experiment I did at ministry did at Kerala by setting up a OncoNet Kerala, a network for purely cancer patients. Gentlemen, I can tell you, over the years, that experiment was, it became very successful, and then, even ISRO was kind enough to give connectivity along with our thing. They were very, very major issues of technology. And actually, if you had seen those days, connectivity was not there. So what connectivity, landline connectivity I had to use for this network was ISDN lines and leased lines. Imagine, in those days, if you had calculated a 256 ISDN line to be used for a teleconsultation for 10 to 15 minutes, the cost of connectivity itself was coming to 5,300 rupees. And you forget about the big platforms and all that. But what was the hope? See, we are starting, and the hope was two major things were happening. Connectivity costs were coming down. The trend was there already. Hardware cost, laptops and mainframes were being taken over by laptops and all that. So obviously, there was one thing that we had realized, that a time will come when these things will not be a big issue. But during our pilots, they were. It was surprising, after a couple of years of my OncoNet project being done in the state of Kerala, where did all the figures started coming. About, I can tell you, when during the implementation stage and subsequent experimental stage, we just looked at about 2,500 consultations which had taken place. Most of them, earlier we tried the first level consultation also, but that was not very successful. And so the first consultation, patient had to come to regional cancer center Trivandrum, which was our expert center, connected with the 5 different remote areas in Kerala. See, Kerala is the longest state, so the top and the bottom will have a difference of about 600 kilometers or more. But only 20% of these cases needed, in face-to-face consultation. 80% of the patients were taken care at the remote. What a great saving it was for the patients, who had to come every 3 months, 4 months, 6 months for reconsultation at the specialist. And I will give you another example. One other specialty which I took was a tropical diseases. One community health center in Habra was connected with the School of Tropical Diseases at Calcutta. No, here another angle came. You see, this was with the help of the state government health department, which they used to suggest as centers. After they were centers, the network was set up and the facilities were set up, but consultations were very low. The community center doctors were still used to refer it. Any patient will come referred to specialty hospital. So I had to use our government link. So a small thing happened happened that order was issued, you can refer the patient to a specialty, that tropical pain center, if after having tried the telemedicine link. The results were very interesting. Suddenly the consultation jumped, and I watched for 1 year. After 1 year, when I started looking at the cases, again the consultations started going downlink. Then I had went to the center and to talk to the doctors. It was a very heartening thing to know. By being in constant touch with the specialists, the local doctors had become empowered. A lot of consultations they will refer. This was a couple of my experiment. But you see, bigger revolution started coming. Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we are able to hear.
Yes,
Even
yes, we are hearing you.
as the time
Please
passed,
keep yourself mute. Let Bedi sir speak about it. Yeah.
the connectivity became so good, and suddenly the whole scenario changes. Even the private sector also started adapting it and all that, and a big revolution came, and this mHealth. I will tell you another great experience. When we look at this thing after 2-3 years, this is again a very interesting experience which I had. From our side, we thought that MCI was not agreeable to make telemedicine as a norm of consultation. So it was not a legal this thing. So we started looking at use of standards and set up some guidelines. You will be surprised. Now in 2020 March, those telemedicine practice guidelines have come. But in 2003, a first attempt from Ministry of IT was made to define those guidelines. Gentlemen, I will show you a document. Are you able to see it? I'm showing you recommended guidelines and standards for practice of telemedicine in India. This was brought out and put on ministry's website in September 2003. Along with that, I had another, the framework which was covering all health care activity. But gentlemen, slowly one has to be very persistent as the technology advanced and our effort continued. Technology was mobile health was really facilitating a lot of these things. Sanjeevani, our platform which we developed way back in 2002 or something, had become, they evolved into eSanjeevani. And see, once these local platforms were available, when the need came, a local technology was available, Health Ministry became active. And as a matter of fact, they had also set up telemedicine working group in 2005 when the Secretary Ota was there. But I can tell you, when in 2003 or 4, once we had put up these guidelines, practice guidelines, I had talked with my secretary that we should take steps for enforcing them. First of all, he said this is not under our business, under business rule, doesn't come under the business rules of Ministry of IT. It has to be done by Ministry of Health. But in 2005, when they, a very dynamic secretary had come, a technical working group was set up. But unfortunately, report was made, but it never, it was finalized and made, but not published. And then, a lot of things happen. But see, the technology had caught on. More and more, centers were coming up. Apollo, big corporate hospitals, that time, few of them were also offering this Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute, where we also set up a school of telemedicine and biomedical engineering, biomedical this thing, technology. So that became a center where, you know, a lot of things could be coordinated. Telemedicine Society was also came up way back in 21 years back, and the evolution continued. And main crux came during this pandemic. Effort which was being made for legalizing this thing, and making it a very common this thing, requirement was there. Suddenly got a trigger through this COVID pandemic, and a very dynamic gentleman in Niti Aayog, Dr. V.K. Paul. A lot of things happen with the dynamism of certain things. They had Telemedicine Society of India helped them to give a framework for the telemedicine practice guidelines, and then with other experts, it was a dream come true. A thing which I was trying with Medical Council of India for years and was not successful. Through the offices of board of governors, you see, MCI and Niti Aayog, they brought out, the board of governors brought out these telemedicine practice guidelines. It is a very interesting thing, that it has become. And suddenly now the whole thing is legalized. Interestingly, guidelines, how health ministry was in a hurry to really take care of the COVID patients remotely. See, so, not only that, those guidelines came, and a lot of specialty hospitals, that also became a kind of business. I recall in November 2020, myself also, I also fell victim to this COVID-19, but I didn't have, that specialty hospitals, telemedicine center was working. I could take isolation telemedicine consult program, So suddenly, commercial, it became a kind of commercial activity also, which is a very healthy thing. Any sustainability has to be supported. And that Sanjeevani, that product developed an e-Mercury, developed at CDAC Mohali. Can you imagine? It was fortified by, coming out, the standards which I had worked with Ministry of Health, and we had notified the first standards from Ministry of Health in 2013, and then they were upgraded in December 2016. These EHR standards are there. So it is my advice that all platforms, a lot of startups are coming, which are, adapting this technology. It is very, very important that the platform should also be compatible, and the same things this eSanjeevani indeed. Now it is totally compatible EHR standards. But question is, when the eSanjeevani Ministry of Health set up this thing, and state health departments have provided so many doctors, thousands of doctors for consultation, free consultation, and eSanjeevani OPD started. Simultaneously, this was between patient and the doctor consult. Patient could choose a center for teleconsult with the doctor. And also under Ayushman program, Ministry of Health empowering game is going on at health and wellness centers. See, we have about 155,000 health and welfare centers. Question is, the program is to empower them so that the doctor to specialist consultation can be done through these 1,500, 55,000, And already I can tell you, I was talking to the CDAC Mohali EL team. They told me that about 12,000 these centers have been activated for consultation between doctor at the wellness center with the specialist. And gentlemen, can you imagine this eSanjeevani OPD and this Ayushman program already have, by about today's figure, 2.3 million consultations have taken place, 23 lakh, out of which about 20%, 25% are from the wellness centers, Dr. 2. See, question is technology developed way back almost 2 decades back is now serving so many patients, and there are major programs, to add more and more. I will not go into a lot of other things, but some of the challenges before I finish, because the time is. Question is, two very crucial issues. One is the privacy issues and data protection issues, security issues. These are something, which are a major cause. And this is not only here, in health, digital health sector itself, So that is one area which will have to, concretize. We are trying for last 20 years. A lot of other things have happened, even telemedicine practice guidelines also. So this issue has to be taken. And when technologies come and we think we are going to reach the far off people, basically e-Sanjeevani OPD also, it requires a basic minimum of a smartphone, which should be preferably 4G. Now, how many of our villages will have a 4G smartphone? So question is how we can innovate further so that people are facilitated, people who do not have resources, they can always go to their health wellness center, but there also, that will also require effort. Whereas there is a facility, anybody sitting anywhere can consult doctor for his problem. So this will be another issue, the technological issue. As the advances, now 5G is coming. What telemedicine can benefits telemedicine practice can get from this? We have to see, because this is a very versatile technology. A lot more can be done. So what are those issues which we should be adapting so that to use this telemedicine even more effectively? Of course, there will be other issues, as I mentioned. I think a lot of people, basically, I'm very happy that our doctor friends, they have come, and in so many areas, whether it's telepsychiatry, teleophthalmology, in so many such areas, suddenly it is becoming very active. We had cases of, Shankara Netralaya and Arvind Eye Hospital, who are very successfully used teleconsultation, where at the periphery center, even not a doctor was, ophthalmologist was not there, a paramedic who using the devices given could consult specialist hospitals, Shankara Netralaya or Arvind Hospital. They are giving hundreds of lakhs of consultations to patients in remote areas through these networks. So very promising area, and lot more can be done with the you see right now, because when we Telemedicine Society of India helped Board of Governors to write down this telemedicine practice guideline. Certain things were just to keep that it should immediately start delivering. So use of EHR standard, electronic health standards, was not mandated. And also interoperability was also not enforced at that time. But National Digital Health Blueprint, in all digital health interactions, they are very good suggestion in which interoperability and EHR standards are very, very important. And in the long term, when we have all kinds of data, they will be the one which will make analytical use possible, and new effectiveness of diseases, medical cure line, medicines will become apparent. It has happened in US, where they have used the same hospital's records to do analytical study and come out with some very, very useful patient healthy outcomes. So this is another very, very important area. When I say data privacy, etc., ultimately the whole data has to go to some registries. Either hospitals have their own registry databases and all that, But the plan is we country should have total interoperable this thing, and then you see, anonymization, identification. Those are big technological issues, and still the data must be available for public good, but it should not result in harm to anybody. The data owner is the patient, so his permission or those areas where his privacy will not be compromised. So assuring that. So these are major challenges which this area will feel. But gentlemen, a US study has shown by 2026, the world market of teleconsultation and telemedicine will be $175 billion for the world. Imagine what a big potential. Already hospitals, major hospitals are adapting this. Right now, artificial intelligence are not under telemedicine practice guidelines. I think somebody is going to speak about that, one of the panelists. But slowly, those virtual reality and augmented reality, they will also help. And you see, on the request of Board of Governors, Telemedicine Society, because doctors are not very comfortable in use of this thing. So through CME, through CME, Telemedicine Society of India could train more than 4,000 doctors, to make them comfortable with use of platform. So there are ways available, you see, and more and more. And as the new doctors are coming, the new generation is very comfortable in using, these IT devices.
Right.
So I can tell you, we have a great future, and I will very keen to hear the views of other panelists and especially doctors who will be using telemedicine in their own specialties increasingly. Thank you, gentlemen.
Great, great. Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you
Yes.
so much, Bedi sir. What a powerful start you have given to this event today, sir. You have enlightened us with so much of information which is around the MA health and around the telemedicine. Your extraordinary contribution of more than 20, sir, years into this particular field. Your efforts is commendable, sir, in telemedicine, and the draft guidelines which you initially drafted, and then your efforts in getting it legalized. Hats off to that, sir. So this is a vision with an experts and visionary leader like you had 2 decades back, which now the people have been started utilizing it, and now we have started understanding the benefits out of it. What better than this panel can be best to do the right justice to a interesting deliberation coming out of the opportunities, the threats, and so many other opportunities. Thank you so much for enlightening us with your opening remarks over here, Bedi sir. I would appeal on behalf of the panel over here to please join the panel discussion and let add more value to this interesting deliberation. May I please invite Ved Prasad to kindly introduce our next panel speakers. Thank you so much, Bedi sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chandanji. And I would like to say a great thanks to Bedi sir, because that was really the informative, elaborative, and a very impressive keynote session. So, right, it's time to introduce our panel members. So, on board we are having Dr. Nilesh Junankar sir. He is a director of advanced laparoscopy and colorectal surgery unit, Junankar Hospital, Nagpur.
Welcome, sir.
Dr. Junankar is also Vice President of an Association of Surgeons of India, ASI, Nagpur chapter, and has served in various capacities, including as secretary, where he contributed to organizing many conferences, including Massicon Nagpur. He has also delivered lectures at numerous international conferences. Welcome, Nilesh Junankar sir. Then we are having on board panel Dr. Alok Malik. He is Group CEO, Omni Hospitals. He is an ex-military surgeon with vast corporate hospital leadership experience across the world. welcome Dr. Alok Malik sir. Dr. Prasad Mukebag, he is a practicing consultant, laparoscopy, gastrointestinal, bariatric, hernia, and a general surgeon with more than 14 years of experience in laparoscopic and general surgery. Dr. Shailesh Hadgaonkar is a founder and director of Asian Ortho Spine Clinic, Pune, and also is heading the spine department from Sancheti Hospital. So I welcome all of the delegates over here. And finally, we do have Jashanjit.
Yes, so maybe a network issue at his place. So may I please, forward the virtual mic to the session moderator of the day, Mr. Jashanjit Singh. He's the CEO of Lokmanya Hospital. So you expertise into strong leadership, team building, and team management skill is actually commendable. Now is the time to get the best out of this eminent panel over here today. Over to you, Jashanjit sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chandan. Good evening to all the esteemed panelists. Thank you, ADMH, for giving me the opportunity to moderate the session. It's interesting that we've got a mix of administrators come doctors, like Mr. Bedi said, because the end user perspective is the one which defines how the things go forward. And I was really enlightened to see, understand the journey and development of telemedicines over the years. Like, it is not something which has just cropped up and something new. It has been here for generations, and in fact, prestigious institutes like PGI, AIIMS, Sanjay Gandhi, all of them have had courses in telemedicine. But like Mr. Bedi said, that we never had the IT bandwidth and the infrastructure to take it to the rural level or to the masses. And it could never be that disruptive what it has been now. To kick off the panel discussion, I would like to quote one of my colleagues, which I do quote whenever I talk on telemedicine. I'll quote him. It is Dr. Dilip Raman from Bangalore. He is running a tele-ICU concept by the name of Cloud Physician throughout India. So what he says is, information technology or IT will never replace doctors. So I repeat, IT is never going to replace doctors, but doctors who use IT are going to replace doctors who do not use IT. So IT is the way forward. If a doctor says that, no, I don't believe in IT in healthcare, so I am sorry to say that is not the way forward. That is not the way country is going to go forward. All the other sectors, be it banking, be it finance, everything has been revolutionized by IT. It was healthcare which was impending till now, primarily because of the fear of consultants, the legal issues, the guidelines which were not notified. Everything was there. TSI has been doing a terrific job since last 15-20 years, like Mr. Bedi said. But the nod, fortunately, it came under the umbrella of pandemic, and I think it is going to go a long way forward. When I say telemedicine, it is just not limited to teleconsultations, which we are primarily going to talk about today. In fact, teleradiology has been an established concept since so many years. Telemedicine in itself, telepathology is something which has been there for the last 5 years. Now, tele-ICU is something which is also picked up. It played a huge role in COVID management. I have a lot of examples to quote wherein government pitched in for the help of private players. Where could they manage COVID centers with the protocols which were laid down by tele-ICU teams? Now it has gone to the masses directly with the power in the hand of consultants, with the teleconsultations, which we are going to talk about, which have to take precedence over the regular consultations. There might be difference of opinions. In a way, it might benefit a physician more than a surgeon, or a surgeon more than a physician, or it might only be beneficial for, say, follow-up patients, not for first patients. That is where probably the perspective of consultants will come in, and the policy makers like TSI. How can we keep improving the standards so that it encompasses a larger population at whole? So let me, I have been given a set of questions which I am supposed to ask. But if anyone is keen to answer on a certain set of things which you want to, is most welcome. So let me start with Dr. Nilesh Junankar, who is a leading colorectal surgeon from Nagpur. Sir, my question to you is that what is the doctor's perspective in the broader view of the teleconsultation guidelines which have come up, and could you share your experience, how well you've been able to utilize the services, and how have your patients benefited on the same? Yes, Dr. Nilesh.
Thank you, Dr. Jashanjit ji and ADMH. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Please
Yeah.
continue.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jashanjit ji and ADMH, for giving me this, for allowing me to participate in this panel discussion on telemedicine, which is very relevant and important topic in today's pandemic, this COVID pandemic. Because via telemedicine, we can practice by keeping the social distance from the patient, or any contagious disease, we have to maintain the social distance. So that is beneficial for this telemedicine. And I would like to make your perspective further, that you said there will be only two type of doctors in the future: the doctors who know telemedicine and doctors who don't know telemedicine. And slowly this second category will vanish, I think. So that is very important, why we should practice telemedicine. And being a surgeon, I also know that why doctors are hesitant to practice the telemedicine. Because as a physician or surgeon, we are very daredevil to treat the patients by taking all the risks. But when it comes to new technology, adapting new technology, we are on the back foot. And that is because we see about the medical legal issues. So we want to stay away from the medical legal issues, and that is why we stay away from this new technologies. But this telemedicine is in vogue since 2000, and actually NASA started it for treating astronauts in the space. And as Mr. Bedi said, that it was in India also since 2003, and ISRO helped for doing this telemedicine. And later on, it was taken by the civil people also because of its convenience. But it was not clear whether it is legal or not, and so doctors were hesitant to take this practice in telemedicine. But on 25th March 2020, Government of India came out with some telepractice guidelines for this to do this practice, telemedicine. And there are some do's and don'ts of this telemedicine practice. Before going to what you can do, I will like to stick on what you can't do, or where you should be apprehensive while doing this telemedicine practice. So thumb rule is, in chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, or asthma, you should restrict to only add-on or refill prescriptions. It should not be a first consultation. And that too, this patient should visit you 6 months before in person, and then only you can do add-on or refill prescriptions for these patients. And this teleconsultation has to be via video. It can't be audio or text only. It has to be definitely video. Then another situation is like emergency medicine. If patient is in accident or some emergency, cardiac emergency, then usually you should avoid telemedicine because it is a critical condition. What you can do is you can refer this patient to a higher center. You can give first aid to the patient. If you suspect that patient is having spine injury, then you can advise him to restrict his neck movements. If you are suspecting a fracture of the limb, then you can ask the patient to restrict or immobilize his limb. And if you see active bleeding from the patient, then you can ask him to give pressure on this bleeding point, or you can use a tourniquet. You can guide his relatives. But that's all. These are the first aid measurements you can do via telemedicine. But after that, you should ask the patient to go to the doctor for in-person care. And third category is surgery and invasive procedures, which can be done remotely, are strictly not to be done right now because it is not legal. So robotic surgery, while one doctor is sitting in one city and operating another city, is not legal right now. So these are some of the things you can't do. But now what you can do, any registered medical practitioner can do telemedicine. There is no need of new registration, and that is very important. And but board of governors are going to give some online courses for this telemedicine practice. So after the government gives these courses, you will have, all doctors will have to undergo these courses within 3 years of its notification. And during these 3 years, you can do telemedicine practice by following these guidelines. And that is why these guidelines are very important while doing practice before online courses are available. So what these guidelines say, now when you practice medicine in OPD basis, you can't practice medicine out of your state because you need a permission from that state for medical council. But in teleconsultation, you can consult any patient from any state. So that is very important. Then another point is doctors can charge fees. As Mr. Bedi has said, unless there is a professional approach, this will not develop. So now guidelines say that you can charge the patient as you charge in the OPD. And nowadays, many software companies also have come with different tools that assist you for doing teleconsultation. And that is why it has taken on a larger role. Then insurance covers telemedicine. That is very important development. Till now, insurance could not cover telemedicine or teleconsultation, but now since insurance can cover all your consultations, then all your medicines you prescribe to the patient, all blood investigations, CT, MRI, all the investigations, all these are covered in the insurance cover. And so patient is also happy to take your teleconsultation because he feels that he is going to get reimbursed for all these things. And if you advise a surgery via teleconsultation, again that point will be taken valid and patient will get reimbursed for the surgery also. So this is a big movement. And another thing is consent is must. For example, when patient comes to your OPD, you don't take consent because it is an implied consent because patient is walking to your OPD, and so there is an implied consent in that. But similarly, in telemedicine, when patient consults you, then there is no need of special consent because it is an implied consent. But if you ask the patient to teleconsult you, then definitely you will have to get explicit consent from the patient. So that is also important to prevent the medical legal problems in this practice. Then there are certain misconducts which you can avoid. I would like to show one slide. There are some misconducts we should avoid, like registered medical practitioner insisting on a telemedicine when patient is willing to travel. So this should be avoided. You can't force the patient to travel to you. You can't force the teleconsultation when patient is ready to travel to you. That is very important. It will invite medical legal problems. Then RMP misusing patient images and data, which is private. Then RMP prescribing medicines from restricted list. So you should know this medicine list which you can prescribe. Otherwise, if you prescribe medicines which are not in the list, then you will be in a medical legal problem. Then RMP soliciting patient for telemedicine through any advertisement. So this is also against the legal issues. Then prescribing medicines without appropriate diagnosis. So this is a very important aspect because recently in the past, there was a case where doctors were jailed for not diagnosing the patient and treating that patient, and finally that patient succumbed and doctors could not get even bail. So proper diagnosis is very important in these cases. Can you see my screen? Dr. Jashanji?
Yes, yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, so this is the permissible medicine.
Yes.
So there are 4 groups actually. Group O says that over-the-counter medicines can be prescribed, like paracetamol or simple over-the-counter medicines. And for this, mode of consultation can be any, like audio, video, or even text. In Group A, there are antifungal, eye drops, refill for diabetes, hypertension, asthma, or any skin diseases. You can do prescribe these medicines in this category of Group A. But here consultation should be video only. It can't be audio or text. So that is very important. Then group B is add-on medicines in hypertension. So for example, if a diabetic or hypertensive patient is there and you want to add some medicines because patient is not getting controlled with the existing medicines, then you can do this, but it can also be done via audio, video or text. And there is a last group of prohibited one. So here Schedule X drugs like narcotics, antipsychotics are there, and these medicines should not be prescribed by any mode of consultation, audio, video. So that is the only limitation of this telemedicine right now. So that's all about the practical guidelines.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nilesh. Shall I take it over from here?
Yeah. Thank you.
I think thank you for your very practical perspective to the apt utilization of the platform and keeping all the regulations in check. I think it's been very demonstrative of you to set the tone for our further colleagues. Dr. Prasad Bhukebag, my question to you, sir, is that I want you to share your experiences pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, and now we are in a phase where we are moving out of the pandemic. How has been your approach towards telemedicine changed or not changed, and how do you think it is going to go forward? And if yes, you're using it, what are the current trends which you see going along with your practice? Dr. Prasad Bhukebag, he's a leading bariatric and laparoscopic surgeon from Mumbai. I would like to him to share his perspective.
Thank you, Jashanjit ji, for giving me an opportunity to speak on this platform. Thank you, ADMH, and I say hi to all my panelists here. So the first question was, how did the pandemic actually change our practice here? Before the pandemic, telemedicine, especially in surgery, was, we did not use it much, especially because most of the surgical conditions need a clinical examination. Investigation-based surgeries can't be performed as such. You would like to see the patient, even if it is a patient with a hernia or maybe appendicitis or cholecystitis. We want to palpate, check the patient, diagnose, and then operate. So that was what was happening before the pandemic started. After the pandemic, for some time, we actually stopped working, being in private practice. Only people who were in a government setup were actually functioning. And that too, most of the important departments like the medicine and pulmonology and most of the things which were related to COVID-19 were functioning, and surgery took a backward step considering the elective cases. And after, I started my practice back again in maybe June or August. And then I started using telemedicine. I was using a platform earlier called HealthFlix. So I started using later, but still, considering surgeries, I used to manage, post-operative patients on telemedicine platforms rather than surgical patients. Obviously, when a patient needs surgery, I have to examine him back again. And now, considering pain in abdomen, maybe conditions like renal stone causing pain in abdomen, things like that, they can be, after taking a proper history on teleconsultation, we might be able to prescribe some medicines for patients' welfare, patients' improvement, and ask them to get a few investigations done. And if those investigations actually show some pathology, then they can come and meet us personally, where we can take further action based on that. So I think that is what the change in behavior has been. But the point is the teleconsultation platforms, they have mushroomed like anything. You don't know which platform to use nowadays. It's become disorganized. Every company comes up with a new app, new platform, new website, and they say you can register here. And patients do not know. We do not know where the patient is going to register and how many apps am I going to download on my phone, or am I going to keep on my laptop to consult on, to teleconsult basically. So that disintegration basically has to become organized in a way wherein one patient registers at one particular place, like a governmental organization or a governmental server, and that becomes valid everywhere all over India. I think Mr. Jashanjit and we were discussing the same thing some time back, and that would actually help us, build further and help us prevent security and privacy issues which will arise with these teleconsultation things. Whatever platforms have come up, we do not know how secure they are and how ethical they'll be. What about the data? Where is it stored? Is there any chance of hacking? Nowadays we see data being hacked. Data is the new oil. You know that everybody wants data. So people might just, people might be, ready to grab this data, find out, research on that, and maybe use it for marketing or any other purpose which might be there. So I think this is one aspect of telemedicine which I think should be improved. But obviously, as as you said, Mr. Jashanjit ji, doctors knowing IT or doctors who embrace IT are going to be the people who are going to go forward. But especially in branches like surgery, it is going to take some time. There was a surgery which took place in 2001. The surgeon from France, he operated from New York on a patient in France. So he operated from New York on a patient in Strasbourg, which is around 6,800 kilometers. So he did a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. That was the first demonstration of a remote surgery. It's called remote surgery. It's not called telesurgery as such. But that phase is going to take a long time, especially surgery. I mean, teledermatology, telepathology, teleoncology, all these things have developed, because, you can actually diagnose things just by seeing pictures or videos. And, that's how it is. I missed the second question, sir.
The second question was the current trends. How do you see the current trends sustaining your practice? Or is it again, you're going to come back to square one? Okay, now we're in a post-pandemic phase. And me as a surgeon necessarily do not qualify as a category wherein most of my patients without screening, I cannot go ahead. So is it going to have a lasting impact on the practice of even say surgeons, or is it going to come back to square one? That was my question.
It is going to have a lasting impact on every branch of medicine. There's no doubt about that. But only thing is the duration of time it will take to have this impact will vary based on the branches.
Right.
So I have now kept a balance. So every new patient I want to see, I call them to the clinic, maintain social distancing and all those aspects. But whenever I see I want to consult a patient who has been operated by me earlier and has developed some problem, some issue, so I tell them, I teleconsult with them on platforms. I listen to what their issues are, and then I treat based on their symptoms. If the patient's symptoms are fairly severe, then I ask them to come down. If not, then I do prescribe medicines and they should be okay. And I think 50 to 60% of the times, or maybe 70% of the times, post-operative and pre-operative things can be managed online. Right. Except when you want to speak about the surgery, explain the risks and all that, that needs a personal consultation. Right. So that you gain the trust of the patient.
All right. Thank you, sir. I think very nicely summed up. I think the couple of things which you brought up was standardization of the apps or the platforms so that doctors can seamlessly use the platforms available in the market. So they do not need to learn each and every, say, a Practo has a different model, Myntra has a, M-Fine has a different model, or there is some HIS based app, it has got a different model. So like a universal charger came up for all the mobile phones, something like a universal flow chart or a flow of process combined with something which on the lines of HL7 or HIPAA compliance, which is there in the US, universal data portability for healthcare. I think that is one thing which there's a lot of work pending. I think Mr. Bedi would be able to comment in the later part of the show. I think, thank you, sir. I think sharing a very good, neat perspective on your practice. I would like to invite Dr. Alok Malik, Group CEO, Omni Hospitals, probably Hyderabad, if I'm not wrong, into the show. Sir, in fact, I've been privy to Omni Hospitals running a pilot on tele ICU a couple of years ago, where I personally visited your center, Omni Vida Hospital. And in fact, it was a pilot for tele ICU which was going on. So, in a broader perspective, as a group CEO of a hospital, how difficult or what are the challenges for you to implement teleconsultations across the bandwidth of your consultants, whether they are full timers or they are panel consultants? If you want to give it as an offering to your clientele or customers or patients, how challenging has it been for you, or is there any example which you can share where you could make it a success model for other hospitals to follow?
I is my can you hear me?
You are very much audible, sir. Please proceed.
Okay, great. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So this is see, teleconsultation was always a challenge. Legalities were very vague, and it was not there at all. And doctors were much more comfortable seeing patients. Patients were much more comfortable being seen by doctors. So they will line up and waste 4 hours and come and show just a blood report to the doctor. Just to show a blood report, he'll come and waste 4 hours. Everybody knew. I mean, the world over, telemedicine has evolved because doctors have realized, hospitals have realized, patients have realized that it at least 30% of consults can be done remotely, if not more. But in India, that personal touch was always there. People want to meet the doctors. COVID changed all that. Government got in laws which made it legal, and suddenly everybody started running for telemedicine platforms, and telemedicine platforms started coming up. India being the IT shop to the world. So many, yeah, you're very right. So many platforms came up, and we also evaluated many of them, and we also didn't agree to work with a few of them. Some of them are very prominent names. Some for cost features, some for cost, some for feature sets. But then instead of having, I think Jashan said that everybody should have the same features. Then Twitter will look like Koo, right? Or Koo will look like Twitter. Not a great idea. But yes, there should be a set of government standards, and there should be a certifying authority for any application which is storing patient data. Now we have the national EHR standards. I think it's in version 2, but the government has not yet nominated any authority, whether government or quasi-government or private, which will say, okay, this application is compliant and this application not compliant. For telemedicine applications, such criteria are not even published. So I hope they will get published one day, and I hope government will nominate an authority to kind of quantify this particular application, that mFine is compliant and day-to-day is not, for example. Today, I don't know. I mean, we are doctors. We don't know. I mean, we see an application, we see that looks nice, this will work for me, and we start using it, right? But yes, post-COVID, doctors started using telemedicine a lot. Patients started using telemedicine a lot. And one of our key effort was to get onto telemedicine as soon as possible, so that COVID, the behavior which started because of COVID, that continues in the post-COVID time also. So yes, we do have traction in telemedicine consultations, and we finally, all hospitals, we have an EMR program which is being budgeted, and finally all our telemedicine consultations will happen through the EMR. The EMR itself will have its own embedded telemedicine thing. So telemedicine technology-wise is a very small piece today. It's an extremely small piece today. Earlier, like Bedi sir was saying, you have to run to ISRO and get a satellite terminal, VSAT terminal, all kinds of crazy stuff. Today you just need 2 telephones to do telemedicine. And contrary to what many people think, even villages have 4G phones, right? So telemedicine is here to stay, and it will become mainstream. And but then it's somebody very rightly pointed out, data security is a big hassle. We don't know how safe and secure the patient data is in any one of these applications. And it's time that the government creates standards. And it's time, apart from creating standards, as I said, that EHR standards are there, but there is no agency which is kind of checking which applications comply to the EHR standards. And there are at least half a dozen foreign-owned EHRs and half a dozen Indian-owned EHRs which are currently being sold in India. But we don't know how safe is the patient data inside them.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for your perspective. I think very pertinent points you mentioned, especially towards the last regarding data safety. I think most of the apps and all, they have outsourced the services to global giants like Amazon and Google for the data services. But we never know, things like Cambridge Analytica do happen, and like Dr. Prasad said, data is what everybody wants. That is what they're going to play around.
I had another point. One
Yeah,
more.
please.
Sorry. Since the question started with tele ICU, and yeah, we do
Yes.
run a tele ICU. I mean, this is in production in our hospital. The telemedicine guidelines say that you're free to treat repeat patients, and it's not safe to treat serious patients. Where does that leave the tele ICU guys? All tele ICU guys are basically treating extremely sick patients. So, does that's a evolving business segment in the healthcare IT space? Does it make it once again under the radar? It's not legal to do tele ICU.
Probably at this point of time, it's a supportive branch of ICU, which helps you streamline protocols and all those sort of things, not as a replacement of conventional ICU care. Probably it's an evolving thing. I happened to speak to Dr. Krishna Prasad, who's associated with Omni Hospitals. He said, in fact, we can 75% of predictive health, which leads to my next question is, through artificial intelligence, 75% outcomes can be predicted from the ICU at the time of admissions, looking at the parameters where the patient is during day one, and one is going to be the day of discharge. So that leads me to the next question, which I would want, sir, you only to answer. How do you think we can leverage artificial intelligence to reach, so that the telemedicine can reach the nick and corner of the country, in fact, the globe? And how can AI serve some purpose, or to an extent serve a purpose, globalize Indian healthcare?
See, to reach to the nook and corner of the country, you're looking at very isolated places where 4G penetration is still not there, and there you're not looking at AI. You're looking at some kind of government support in setting up infrastructure, and this is where the Chinese did much better than us. Chinese at one point of time, you'll be surprised, the world's biggest telemedicine equipment supplier today is a Chinese company. Not surprisingly, earlier it was an American company. The very big American chip maker, computer chip maker, which is number 2 to Intel, they were the world's biggest telemedicine equipment supplier. And then the Chinese government said, okay, we are a big country, we have a huge population, we don't have that many doctors to serve all the population. The only way that the remote populations can be served is through telemedicine. So they called a couple of then small Chinese telemedicine equipment companies. Hey guys, why don't you do one thing? We will give you big contracts. You start copying and you start scaling up your operations. And ultimately, those guys became biggest telemedicine equipment suppliers in the world. And that kind of thing there are lots of telemedicine equipment which are being made in the country of indifferent quality. But then they can all, once a proper policy is there on telemedicine equipment, Equipment is what? I mean, you have multi-para monitors, multi-para transducers, pulse, BP, SpO2, and all the rest of it, which can plug into a SIM card and send your data online through a simple SIM card. Those kind of equipment are being made in India, but then not enough numbers, not in enough. I mean, and they don't have enough enough orders. Now, any telemedicine project begins by a grant from, say, the Bill and Melinda Grant Foundation, and a bunch of guys come. There is a big press coverage, and lots of photographs get taken, and they get published the next day news. And after that, everybody forgets about it. I mean, that is why brilliant people like Dr. Bedi have been struggling for 20 years, but still telemedicine has not really gone mainstream in interior India the way it should. I mean, there's huge possibilities, but then it never happened. AI in telemedicine, AI is already working when we look at telepathology, teleradiology, teleophthalmology. Lots of AI is working there, basically in the imaging field. Basically, most of AI that we see is in the imaging field. But when it comes to diagnosis, primary care, yes, I'm sure people are aware about an app called Babylon. It's totally deep learning AI based app, and in China it has been given permission to work as a primary care physician. The app in remote areas. I have been told by people in the industry that similar permissions are round the corner for the same app. Babylon is a big UK-based AI app company. In last year or a couple of years back, there was a shootout between Babylon and which is basically an AI-based app with all kinds of medical knowledge, and Royal College of Physician doctors, and the app consistently beat the doctors in terms of diagnosis and treatment. Okay, so in China, Babylon, which is now there on their Weibo platform, a person in a remote area, they have notified remote areas. So a person in a remote area can go on Babylon and can get a diagnosis, can get a prescription, and can get medicines. This is probably also being considered in at least 2 states in India.
Thank you, sir. I think very interesting perspective and very informative what you shared. Probably that is going to be the way forward for something what Indian primary health also deserves. If an app and the very end, the training part is taken care by the government or say institutes, I think the way our landscaping is done, I think it will be a huge game changer if it comes up. Thank you for your perspective, sir. I move towards Dr. Sailesh Hadgaonkar. He's a leading spine surgeon from Pune. My question is very general to you, sir. I think firstly, as a surgeon, we would want to understand your perspective towards utilizing telemedicine for your and your benefit of your patients, and what have been the learnings for you, and how difficult or easy it is for you being a spine surgeon to evaluate patients without, say, physical examination. We want to understand your perspective, sir.
Yeah, thank you, the team, ADMH, for giving us this opportunity for this wonderful futuristic webinar. I would like to share our experiences. As we all know, back pain, neck pain is becoming very, very rampant these days, and we are seeing the insurgence of back pain after the common cold. And we have a huge number of patients coming to the clinic. Most of them don't need any surgical treatment, and that surgical spectrum is very, very small. And when we realized this, we thought this telemedicine will be a very, very good and apt thing for patients who come for visits from very far to us. We are at a central place in Maharashtra where we have a lot of patients coming from periphery, and every time asking the patient for follow-up and things like that. And this is all, they are all new learnings after the COVID era. We never used to consult the patient on tele or on any app. But now we are realizing the importance mainly in our specialty for patients who are routine follow-ups, patients who are post-operative follow-ups. It's a great application, and it's the application for future. But yes, mind it that sometimes we have to be careful. Sometimes we have seen some patients where there is something happening in the leg. Patient complains of leg pain, and we are just seeing the patient on screen. But in such situations, we cannot totally rely on telemedicine, because the reasons for leg pain can be many. It's not only sciatica, it is not only some muscle cramp. It can be a DVT or things like that, and it can be a problem. But in general, we have to be very, very clear in understanding the clinical implications of this and the new thing which we are trying to do. So whenever we have some patient who are in dilemma, we always tell that you should go to a local doctor, get examined. Still, this is the era of telemedicine, this is the COVID era, and we are learning this is definitely going to be a new normal. But certain things are very, very important in today's world also, that clinical examination. We have to have a good understanding about the clinical scenario in certain selective cases. I will say 5 to 10% of the cases probably will need in basically musculoskeletal examination, where we need that additional thing. Otherwise, most of the things can be routinely, like a lot of people have cervical spondylosis or lower back, lumbar spondylosis. We really can treat them with medications, physiotherapy and rehab, where they can be followed up. And because these patients are with a lot of pain for ongoing for many years, these patients can be very, very comfortably treated with telemedication and teleconsultations. We don't need to call them for like 500 kilometers. They should not come to us to see. It saves a lot of cost of travel. It saves a lot of things, and that is what I realized. The second thing is that the adaptability, because a lot of senior doctors or a lot of people who don't want to accept that telemedicine is a great tool. That is what I have realized amongst our peers and our colleagues. They don't want to accept that this is something good. They will always say, no, this is not good because I am missing so much of clinical findings. But they are not trying this well. I think the thing is that we should understand that if you try it, you utilize it, probably you will get adapted to it, and this is going to be the next new thing. And seeing your all the talks, I'm definitely sure that there are a lot of changes coming. AI is coming, and the mindset also needs to be changed by doing such kind of awareness programs, which will serve the lot of remote areas. Today we talk about geo, which is there in almost all the rural parts of India, but we are not utilizing it in a right way for healthcare. We are talking about telemedicine mainly in the big cities, where people can pay and people can come online. But this is not happening with the person from a very remote area where it can be subsidized, it can be treated. So I think 90 to 95% of the things can be very, very well taken care of by telemedicine and teleconsults.
Thank you, Dr. Shailesh. I think it's a very apt perspective which you shared. I think as far as surgical branches is concerned, I think the surgeon himself needs to understand where to draw the line. If there is not a clinching diagnosis which has not happened, I think it is better, like you said, send to a local practitioner or get a particular set of investigations done. I think that's very apt according to the surgical branches which we treat. Right diagnosis, I think, is going to lead to right treatment. Thank you, Dr. Shailesh. I think it's been very enriching experience. I especially requested Mr. Bedi to hold by. He was the keynote speaker and he was not supposed to be part of the discussion. But I sincerely wanted, since he represents Telemedicine Society of India, so he would have got a fair idea of the concerns and the limitations which current telemedicine guidelines provide. And that is why I wanted him to request. And I would now also request him to put in the closing remarks with regards to the whole discussions we've had. And where do you think we are headed towards? And what are the corrective measures which need to be taken? And one specific question to you, Bedi sir, is that what are being an entrepreneur? Suppose I am an entrepreneur. There's an entrepreneur who is an attendant to this list. What are the various investment opportunities which can rocket the whole landscape of telemedicine? If you could share so that certain entrepreneurs could also pitch in and take it to all together new level. Please take it over, Mr. Bedi.
Okay, thanks. See, first of all, I can tell you, no, see, a lot of things happen. We not only in India, we have to look around. In USA, all private hospitals, 50% of the private hospitals are teleconsultation and telemedicine is a part of their system, and remaining 50%. The expected they large number percentage of them, they are in the process of adaptation. And mind that, you see, this is a kind of private practice which all the super specialty hospital, major hospitals which are doing in US. So they are seeing a big commercial point in, also having a routine teleconsultation program within their hospital. The question is, some of the thing, you see, I was listening to Indian. It so happens that in spinal injury, our national capital region had spinal injury center in Delhi. This is very interesting, and they are very effectively using, for post consultation patients. I mean, if there anybody surgery, and if they want to know, what kind of exercise, if there is a complication, whether it is based on some particular situation, tele rehabilitation is a very, very important area for that hospital, and on and off, also taking up issues to enlighten, the patients which they have treated. Which are the areas where patients can, remotely also talk to them. If there is a need, they will call. But trends, within this pandemic period, I can tell you, so many private big chain hospitals have adapted telemedicine as part of their routine. My own doctor sometimes asks me whether you will like to have a teleconsult with me, or you will like to come down to my house, to our hospital. And imagine, I was mentioning during my COVID isolation, I was on a totally teleconsult service, especially care service, where every 2-3 days, their doctor, especially doctor will talk to me, and the nurse will be in constant touch with me to update my condition. See, I can tell you, a lot of startups are getting interested in this. Right now, I can see it's not a great business which they are finding, but slowly the startups which have a slightly better solution, and once they have experience to tell for whatever they have installed in one particular clinic, so obviously I can see they are surviving. That means there is some business available. They are trying to make their platforms very effective when they even install. Question is, a lot of things, doctors will not like to. For example, if you are asked to remember some of the terms which are used in SNOMED CT, I can tell you there will be immediate reaction from a clinical doctor. He will like to enter some of the things which are clinically used, and the system itself should take care to convert them in a standard EMR format, so that when it goes into the database, it is in that standardized EHR, whether it is SNOMED CT clinical terms or something, or guidelines like ICD-10 codes and all. So this is, but there is actually, some of the testing facilities, etc., certifying platform. Initiative was taken by Ministry of Electronics long back. They have a wing called STQC, standardized testing and quality control wing. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened. That project was granted and they have been working very hard. But suddenly, I don't know how it got stalled. But I can see after this discussion, there is a big need for some, people to know what whether certain commercial applications are worth conforming to the standards or not.
There seems to be a technical glitch. Can everyone hear Mr. Bedi?
Yeah, sir, you have joined. Sir, please unmute. Bedi, sir. Bedi, sir, kindly unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, it's audible, sir.
Yeah, it's
You
audible.
unmuted yourself excellently.
And moreover, I think I will also like to tell you a lot of initiative has been taken by Ministry of Health to set up a National Resource Center at Pune, CDAC. So any facilitation, if you want to, a particular group wants to, invite them to familiarize them on so many standards, EHR standards, which are currently earlier. It was Snowmed City, but now they are covering the full range of standards where training can be given, or they are holding regular webinar. I will like you to be join their webinar. They take up a standard and they bring in experts how to go about the whole thing. You can put your ICT persons there, in those webinars. Those are free of cost. Anytime you can. Only thing is there may be a bit need to disseminate when these webinars are taking place. Very good, very informative and practical how to do it. They are especially when on the recommended standard, they are taking this on behalf of Ministry of Health. So please go to CDAC Pune Health Informatics Group website and see very regularly, once in a fortnight or once in a month, some or the other standard will be discussed, and implementation issues which people have faced. They will be elaborated by the expert who has used that effectively. Anything special you would like to me to answer?
No, I think, sir, you nicely summed it up. I think that is what we are looking for. I think it's been a very exciting session, especially with the doctor participation and their perspectives, and your visionary approach towards how to take it forward. In fact, not only developing it.
Telemedicine Society of India has taken steps. I hope that the CME part, where these platforms can be more effectively used. So currently we were in a hurry. Telemedicine Society of India, because the board of governors had told them, train the doctors. So 5,000 doctors were, course material was set up and they were trained so that they became very conversant with at least use. But specialized activities to be put in that use, like how the standards should go along with the consultation, so that a full report which is analyzable, that will require some more.
I think probably, sir, it's a subject which is very hot, very evolving. I think a lot of perspectives are coming up on a day-to-day basis. Definitely, amendments are going to come up very soon, and I think it will be keep evolving. And
Question about telemedicine practice guidelines. Right now, they have not encouraged too much use of AI, but you cannot deny it. Ultimately, right now, the only thing is a doctor at his own end may use AI to advise the patient, but applying directly an AI tool, that is not recommended right now in telemedicine practice.
probably, I think that's a thing which is under research. I'll probably say to be.
I think one important thing in this is probably that emergencies and complex cases. These are the two things where we will take time for going close via teleconsultation and telemedicine. These are the two things. Otherwise, most of things can be sorted via teleconsultation. These are the two areas probably with AI and development we will come to know in future. But right now, these are the two things. What do you think, sir, Dr. Bedi?
See, I can tell you, look at the tools like virtual reality. How effective it is in, teaching medical students for on surgery. They literally they are operating on it. This augmented reality and virtual reality. Question is those the very important things are there. For empowerment of surgeons and doctors, your students, those can become very effective tools. All the time, dead bodies may not be available, but when you are doing surgery, you are opening up. Those virtual reality really makes it so important to give that training. So I think those are very promising areas which will slowly evolve and become in routine usage through, and that will is another mode of telehealth.
Right.
Mm.
I think we'll let that be as concluding remarks for the whole panel discussion. Very nicely summed up, sir. I think, Chandan, there's a scope to have a couple of questions if there are to be answered
Yeah,
from the
please,
attendees.
Jashanji ji. I can see one of the questions in Q&A box if you would like to take this up.
Yeah. It is from Mr. Dr. Bhupender Rana. How a registered medical practitioner would ensure that all requirements of telepractice guidelines are met with while providing teleconsultation? Dr. Nilesh, would you like to take that up?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Actually, it has been given very nicely in telemedicine practice guidelines how you should go further, and almost each and every aspect has been given. One has to just read it and follow the details. I have already told what you can do, what you can't do in this practice, and so it's not very rocket science. It is very simple. You can do your practice like you do in your OPD. Only there are certain things where you should constrain yourself, and it is a clinical, basically clinical acumen where you know that I should treat this patient, I will not treat this patient. And at any stage of consultation, you have a prerogative that you can ask the patient to come to your OPD, and then you can do the further teleconsultation. One interesting finding I would like to share, that during this COVID pandemic, there was a lot of intake of kadha, spices, and even strong medicines like steroids were given to the patients. And I'm doing a lot of colorectal practice. So I came across a lot of patients who are having pies, fistula, and they come up with, they may be having these problems beforehand, but with these medicines and kadha, they get aggravated. And so initially I was a little bit reluctant while consulting these patients online, because pies, fissure, they create a lot of problems. They can cause bleeding. Patient can have serious implications. For example, if a pies is infected and you go on treating the patient, it may go on for fistula formation, and then patient may see you that you have treated me without seeing me. But once I went through all these guidelines, which are been in consultation with Niti Aayog, so these guidelines are very good. And so I started consulting these patients, because special situations are there. Like patient is having COVID positive, he is in the home quarantine or in hospital quarantine, and now he develops a piles or fissure or some symptoms, and he can't go to the coloproctologist. So what you can do is teleconsult that patient. You give his medicines, prevent his symptoms, and later on he can come to you in person. You can examine and then you can operate or give some special medicines to him. But definitely you can consult the patient and relieve him of his symptoms.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other question, Chandan?
I could see in a chat box there is the how can startup start telemedicines, and what are the hurdles and permissions required? What are the prerequisites to start telemedicine center? If anybody would like to take this question, how
Anybody
can a
want to
startup
take this question? if I'm not wrong, I don't believe there is any specific requirement. It is just like the regular process of formation of a company, registering yourself with MCA and enrolling yourself. I believe it's the same process, or is it something different, Mr. Bedi? If somebody wants to venture into entrepreneurship or start a telemedicine company.
Yeah, telemedicine practice guidelines very clearly mention any registered medical practitioner can use telemedicine tools, for giving consultation.
So it's
He has to be registered medical practitioner certified by MCI or whatever that, and, he should have a proper degree recognized.
He
medical
should be
degree.
MBBS or above. He or she has to be MBBS or above. That is
Yeah.
called as a registered medical
Yeah,
practitioner.
yeah.
Teleconsultation
They have
guidelines.
defined it very well,
Yeah, it's a very good definition.
all right.
Perfect. I guess that has been answered then. Then we sum up, we conclude the session for the day.
Chandan, I think I'll just
Please,
find one
go
final
ahead.
remark from my side. I
Please
think
go
it's been a very enthralling and educative session, and I think all the kudos to you for arranging this. I would only request you should make it a series of lectures because it's a evolving topic, and there would be a topic, probably say medical legal aspects of telemedicine. So
Right.
choosing such wise topics and time to time organizing these sessions would, I think, go a long way solving the purpose of clearing ambiguity over the use of telemedicine in our surgeon doctor friends, and for itself to evolve as a subject which is going to stay for a long time. That is from my side. I think that those are the closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much, Jasanjit ji, for taking this opportunity and accepting our request to moderate this wonderful panel discussion. And thank you all the eminent speakers for scheduling your your important time and your important schedule. Few doctors like Dr. Shailendra, you are sitting in your official dress, so that that comes at how apt are we and how serious are we to be a part of such kind of deliberation where your input, your ideology could empower, could give some good insights to the people who are expecting something as a good output of this event. And thank you all the audience who we have been sincerely watching us, listening us, following us, and you have registered yourself and you are waiting for this day to come. So finally, this is an end-to-end event. Thank you so much, Jasanjit ji. You have been a lovely moderator for the session over here. And I think a rightful justice has been done to the topic which you have decided, the emerging world of modern teleconsultation and telemedicine. Great insights coming up from Bedi sir, from you. You had been giving a wonderful and a very powerful start to this event, which the panel speakers took it as a thread. Some insightful talk been coming up with some expert panel like Dr. Alok Maulik. Sir, your experience counts a lot. Your words and thoughts have given great insights and input to this topic. You are very calm and you gave a very good examples and some few case studies, which was very rightful, accepted, and very well matched with this discussion. I'm impressed with Dr. Nilesh ji. You have with such a interesting PPT PowerPoint, you made this teleconsultation and mHealth easy to understand to all the viewers and listeners over here. Dr. Prasad ji, thank you so much for your for your valuable time over here. It has been overall a very engaging, a very wonderful deliberation from all you thought leaders and experts in this panel. You have been leading some good institutions and good hospitals of this country. You are in the top leadership and having a role of huge responsibilities over your shoulders. Along with your support of your HODs, doctors, nurses, and the entire hospital staff, you and your team have been delivering an excellent service during this difficult time. Your commitment during this unprecedented times is in the welfare to the people and to the society. That's a big salute to you and your team. So truly the frontline warriors. To the audience, we hope that you have enjoyed this learned, valuable insights from our eminent speakers, experts, and healthcare professionals. We truly appreciate your time with us. We will meet yet in another engaging webinar and thought leadership in this Health Tech Summit. Thank you so much, Jasanjit ji, for giving us that insight. We'll be definitely keeping that in mind, and maybe some more interesting and in-depth thought discussion will be keep on coming up with and some more understanding on the new areas in this sector with some emerging news, new age technology, new trends, and new innovation which has been transforming the healthcare sector. Don't miss it out. Miss it out. So just keep following the social, handles of the ADMH. We are there on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So keep liking that, sharing that. So we will keep updating you on the latest insights over here. And would also like to share your best practices, any articles which you have, anything as an innovation or anything. If you are in a habit of writing something, please share that with us. Our editorial team will examine it, evaluate it, and if it is very beneficial for the stakeholders of healthcare and wellness practitioners, we'll be publishing that on our portal, and we will be doing the social media promotion of it so that it reaches out to the maximum audience of healthcare and people would benefit out of that content which you are providing to us. So thank you so much. Stay safe and stay tuned. Namaste to everybody. Thank you so much.